Hey, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor,
Yeah, I'm gonna maybe change it to broadcast journalist. I don't know. What do you think?
broadcast journalist.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, what we're doing here, clearly journalism and not just two guys bullshitting the whole way through. Yeah, it's
I agree. I think that honestly, I mean, compare us to Brian Stelter. I think you get a better take on news. You get a more accurate presentation of news. And I mean, sure, that
fair.
guy got fired, but like, this is still we're broadcast journalists, Kevin. That's it. End of it.
Fair enough, and it's like we got our professional backgrounds here and, you know, professional equipment. We're all good in professional like consumption habits during the show. All right, so folks, again, you know the drill. This is our cold open. We're gonna do our intro in just a second. Dive into the radio show portion, and hang out. So we got a few topics around. Governor Hochul.
Yay! You guys are gonna love it. She
Yeah,
is
some Ron
the leader
DeSantis
we
stuff.
deserve.
Whether or not we're all doomed, and maybe we'll talk about Tim's favorite economist, Robert Reich. Like
He's not an economist. He's a
he's got
joker.
he's got a Robert Reich tattoo on his chest. Like he's a big fan. And
I don't think I do. Let me check.
I know, fake news. I know.
Yeah, that's fake news for sure.
So we'll do that, and yeah, we'll get into it in a minute. But of course, y'all know the drill. Leave your comments if you want to weigh in on the show. We love hearing it, and yeah, we'll go from there. So we're gonna start in 10 seconds. 10.
Now, an hour of clarity for exhausted people of our nation mired in toxic partisanship. Left versus right, us versus them. While we pay to keep our politicians fighting, how do we, the people, rise up and solve the great challenges of our time? We do it by embracing freedom and liberty. There may be no such thing as a free lunch, but this hour is as close as it gets. Welcome to A Free Solution.
All right, welcome to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant O'Connor.
I'm here, Kevin. Maybe I changed my name to broadcast journalism because journalist, but you gotta say journalist like that.
Journalist?
That's how I want to say it.
Okay, well, we'll try to work that in next time to recognize your professional bona fides.
Yeah,
and yeah, no, why not? You're just as good as any of them, Tim.
I think honestly we get a fairer take on the news. We're anti-authoritarian, and I don't think people get that every day. Like they don't get that anyplace else. We're literally not here trying to fearmonger people into watching more of our show. We're trying to calm them down, help build a rational sense, and recognize that some of their problems are real, and some of them are manipulations by the government.
Absolutely. All right, but coming up next is why you should be furious with Governor Hochul.
I can agree with this one.
No, but yeah,
like no,
but actually though, for real, it's not.
She's awful.
Thing. Yeah. So yeah, we got a few topics up tonight, folks. Some news related to Governor Hochul, some news related to Ron DeSantis. Tim's favorite economist at the end of the show. We'll see if we get to him. Mr. Robert Reich. And yeah, so and maybe whether or not we are all facing our impending doom too. We'll talk about the doomsday clock.
We should be talking about it more. And again, I just said we're not here to sensationalize, but a legitimate conversation about the world events that doesn't include the fact that we're moving closer to a nuclear war is insane. We need to be talking about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of that stuff. And thanks again for everyone who's listening. Of course, we're streaming online for this show. If you listen to us on WYSL, we really appreciate it. We're broadcasting Thursday evening, but we always do our live show recording around 9 p.m. on Tuesdays. So if you are listening on the Free Solution Facebook page, Free Solution YouTube channel, the Kevin Wilson pages, the Tim O'Connor pages, wherever you're listening to us, appreciate y'all being here. We even got Patricia on YouTube who says, gave up playing Dungeons and Dragons online to watch you guys. Better be good. I know it will be.
It's going to be the best.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, appreciate you giving up the Dungeons and Dragons just to watch us. That's nice. That's if it's game night, I don't know. I don't know if I'd do it. I don't know. But appreciate the dedication, Patricia. No, so let's talk about Governor Hochul and like so she did a conference today. We'll talk about some of the healthcare workers stuff too, and I know you've been looking at that. But like she was asked a question about qualified immunity, and in the first question, this is a question from like Zach Williams who asked her, uh, state police having trouble hiring people. It says there's anti-police sentiment, and asked her if she supports the proposal to repeal qualified immunity. State lawmakers are starting a new push. Do you support it? And then y'all can read my Twitter at Kevin Wilson RC, and same with Tim O'Connor. We retweeted it. You can read what her response to that question is, and it's word soup. I'm not going to get through all of it. It's
You're
Tim,
being all
accurate
like kind of
assessment.
complimentary there, really. It's
Yeah.
just it
It,
doesn't.
it goes all over the place. Talks about healthcare workers, and then like just waffles back and forth in her support. Which of course leads to a follow up question from Zach Williams, who says that, oh, okay, so do you oppose the repeal? Then you oppose it? In response, I'm quoting her here is, I'm not going to give you a straight answer on that because I'm going to say this: I don't support the repeal of that. No, I don't support the repeal of that. Okay.
I admire her stunning bravery. I mean,
Yeah.
she is just a straight shooter. And guys, Kevin and I have talked about qualified immunity a number of times. The issue is if we can break a hole in qualified immunity, we can bring back some sense of accountability, not just of police officers, but of your local elected officials when they get caught with their hands in the cookie jar. Most of the time, they simply get away with it. They get to say, "Well, I made a mistake. I'm really sorry about that." And
Yeah.
there needs to be a chink in that armor that we can latch onto that will make honestly just bring back some accountability to us.
Yeah, I understand. And so just to review what qualified immunity is that it's basically a Supreme Court created doctrine that makes it nearly impossible for police officers to be sued in a civil suit when they have violated someone's rights, when they've injured someone. Right. So this isn't like sending a police officer to jail. It's like, should a police officer individually face some liability if they have harmed someone, right? And the Supreme Court uh, has kind of built this case law around, and this isn't something that Congress passed. Congress actually passed a law way back 19th century stating like explicitly the opposite of this, that like people who are public figures like police officers, anyone working for the state could be held individually liable for certain types of actions, right? Even in the capacity of their official duties. And that kind of got twisted over time to say only if they violated constitutional rights as proven by previous case law. So unless some other previous case has said the actions of a police officer have specifically violated your constitutional rights, and there's a previous case of this, then you cannot get any sort of redress for a police officer who's harmed you. Now, the defense about all this, including what Governor Hochul says, is like, well, we need to respect the police, and we need to, they get a lot of, of a bad reputation, and let me see if I can find the exact quote. So she says, like, the vast majority are hardworking individuals who deserve more respect than they've been getting the last few years. Okay, sure. Like, fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll see that point. And I always qualify my discussion around qualified immunity to just say, like, this isn't about every police officer. There's a lot of police officers who go out there, they try to do well, they try not to harm anybody. This isn't about that. This is about like the people who are going out and hurting people and probably should be held accountable in some individual way. Because what ends up happening is there's no individual accountability. So people will sue the police department generally, and then us, the taxpayers, end up paying for that.
Absolutely. That was one of my friends, one of his counters to qualified immunity, and he happens to have served on the police force for a long time, was that they do occasionally, not occasionally, like 6 times in his life, he was sued, accused, and acquitted of things that he didn't do. It's a way for a defendant to muddy the waters of their trial So he was concerned with ending. And look, guys, a lot of police officers lean libertarian. They see the problems with the government. They do have a job to do. I get that that's a contradiction. I know libertarians get, you're not a real libertarian unless you hate the cops. I don't hate the cops. Sorry. But qualified immunity, I do hate qualified immunity, and I want it gone. Larry breaks it down pretty well as to suggestions on how to move forward with it, and a better way to protect good police officers and get rid of bad police officers. And qualified immunity contributes to all that stuff. The good cops protecting the bad cops, and so those are problems that these kind of things would help solve.
Yeah, no, 100%. And with repealing qualified immunity, like I think you and I might have talked about this before, but like one solution to taxpayers having to bear the burden, and bad police officers staying on. Again, I'm not saying all the police officers are bad, but there are bad ones out there. There are people who, when given a position of power, when given the legitimate violence ability of the state, they will abuse that power. That's just that's what it is, right? Like, and I think all but the most like delusional folks would admit, like, there are some bad cops out there.
They all admit it, right? And they're like, we need to deal with it individually. Like
okay, then let's do it. Qualified immunity is the way to do it, right?
They don't connect the dots to that. Like we come up with the plans of saying, hey, they've got to have insurance. Yes, we got to pay for their insurance. Bad cops, insurance goes up pretty quick. Good cops, their insurance maintains and they keep on the job. Like, we'll be aware of what's going on, and we'll be able to see, publicly, openly.
Like, if you get the insurance companies involved, this, like, they don't want to lose money on this. They want to keep collecting their premiums and be like, just not paying out at all, right? But if you have situations where there are police officers who are having to pay out multiple times, who've done like egregious things, and they, no one's bothering to press criminal charges against them, but they keep having civil suits against them, eventually insurance companies are going to say, no, you're costing us way too much money. We're not going to insure you. And that's a way that the market can deal with bad police officers.
It's freedom, baby. That's all we're talking about here, right? Like a self-correcting system that puts things out in the open. So, like, I was sympathetic with my friend when he was explaining to me that he had been sued multiple times as a way to muddy the waters. How do we deal with that under this system? I'm just kind of
I'm not totally sure. Like, I understand like the criticism, right? Like, okay, like muddying the waters, sure, like it's gonna be like a he said, she said, or he said thing, right? Like, but that's going to happen in court too, right? Like, you get into like a criminal court, police officers going to have to go up and testify and say like what happened. Here's documentation of the incident while the prosecution proves their case, and the defendant and his or her lawyer is going to try to muddy the waters. They're going to do that in that case too.
True. Right.
Right. And like the bar for proving injury is like a little bit different in civil court, but it's still pretty high to prove that like someone is responsible for injuring another person and is owed some sort of compensation for that, right?
Yeah.
So it's to me, if you're going after someone and there's a criminal conviction, and I don't know, like, I can get how this could tie up resources, but here's another thing related to that. If you require insurance for these police officers, and they're the ones who are going to have to pay out if they do something wrong, the insurance companies are going to send their good lawyers over and cover the cost of those legal fees because they don't want to have to pay out.
Right. So that's actually, I think, the self-correcting mechanism could still continue, and I think we'd have to kind of make sure that premiums can't rise unless there's an adjudication, right? Like that, unless the civil suit is won or something like that. Like, I could just
they're still going to have to go through that system. They're still going to have to convince, a judge, or if they do a jury civil suit, they're going to have to convince someone that they had their rights violated and they were injured because of the actions of that police officer and is owed some sort of compensation. The lawyers at the insurance company are going to defend that, and if it's indefensible, if their actions are completely inappropriate, they're probably going to settle. But same thing, okay, they settled, that costs some money. They either raise premiums or they say, nope, we're not insuring you anymore. And if
Yeah.
insurance companies like, we can't make any money off of you, well, maybe that person just shouldn't be a police officer. Like, they're bad, they're liability, they're going to like kill someone if they keep going down that path.
Well, fair enough, but to give a good cop the benefit of the doubt is where I'm trying to lead this conversation, or take this conversation. But again, I get the point of this self-correcting mechanism is something that I'd like to see in play.
I mean,
I'd like to see this concept of qualified immunity for government service just gone, right? So,
yeah, I mean, like, in terms of the benefit of the doubt thing, it's like they get just as much, far more than like any one of us, right? Like, you could be
mhm,
sued too for something similar, right? Like, if you get in a fight with someone, there's no criminal charges pressed, but like they say, like, you broke their bone when you hit them or something, right?
right,
Like, you could be, or even if it's untrue, like, you could still get dragged into court for that thing. Now you counter sue, right? Which the insurance companies might do if someone makes an egregious false accusation. Like, there's opportunities for counter suits as well, and they'll try to recover damages for that. So like, we have systems in place to be able to do this. And in fact, things are probably still going to be pretty stacked in favor of police officers, the way we've structured this. But there's just a little teeny tiny bit more accountability for some of the worst actors in that system.
okay. And again, like I want to make sure I want to be sympathetic to good people doing a good job, but I also, regardless, want to change this concept of qualified immunity. And I like the idea of what we're talking about. I think it's a real solution to an ongoing problem, and it provides a self-correcting mechanism, which I think people overlook in our society anymore. Like, thank you for your service. Like, we just give everybody who serves in government the benefit of the doubt. And I'm, as you know, Kevin, skeptical of giving government
Yeah, I
people
know.
the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, and that's very, and if you're skeptical of giving government the benefit of the doubt, and I'm not talking about you specifically, but anyone who's listening to this program is skeptical of that, just remember, like, police are the armed agents of the state. They're there to enforce the rules of government with violence, right? And that's, sometimes those rules make sense. Don't hurt people, don't take their stuff, right? And
Right.
if you're going to continue doing those things, you're going to continue hurting people and taking their stuff. Sometimes the only way to stop someone doing that is with violence. I get that. Like, that makes sense to me. That's why I'm not like abolish the police. That's
Right.
not where I'm at.
Right.
I know there's some people who are police abolitionists. Like, it's a real thing that's out there, including libertarians. I ain't quite there.
We're not a real libertarian, and neither am I, right? We're looking for practical solutions for a freer society. So yeah, philosophical purity up against pragmatic governance. It does remind me of some of the things that we talked about last night. I don't know if you caught any of it, but
Yeah,
there is
you're on.
this.
We'll remind the audience that you're on what?
Oh
Tell
yeah,
us.
I was on the Sharp Club with Larry Sharp, Adam Nutter, and Charla Burnett. And guys, we had a great conversation. We solved a lot of problems. We solved the homeless problems. We solved
You
the
fixed
future of.
homelessness?
We
What you
we
talking
fixed
about?
it, man. We fixed
Yeah,
that. We
come on,
fixed.
man, you go outside. There's no more homeless.
Well, it's going to take a while to implement.
All right, all right, all right,
But it
cool.
was a
All right,
great
roll it back.
show.
All right, I'll get less excited about that.
Yeah, it was a great show. I had
Yeah,
a lot of
but yeah,
fun.
the parts I was able to catch were good.
Yeah, Adam is a funny guy. Larry is brilliant. Charla is amazing, actually. Charla, I hope I'm saying her name right, but she basically is a PhD. She actually has built a solution to homelessness in her community, where she has rental places that people can kind of structure their own payments. They can participate. They can come and go, and she's like proactively kind of making a little bit of money, right? Like, she exists for profit, but she's serving an underserved community with her own brand of freedom, right? And providing things for people that are otherwise marginalized in society. God bless her, man, making money off of it too. It's just a little bit of brilliance.
Yeah, well, hey, that's nice. I again, the diversion from the topic at hand, but like, I always appreciate that, like, sensible minded folks can understand that you can make money and be providing value to society at the same time. There's this,
Yeah.
like, thought on the left where it's like, oh, if you're in any way making a profit, then you're evil. It doesn't matter how much value you're providing, how much good you're providing on net. Oh, if you walk away with a little bit of that money, then somehow it's tainted. It's evil.
I've always been amazed by that. This is something that has grown over my life, Kevin, where people are like prophets are evil, and like it goes right down to like your neighborhood plumber. People hate that guy sometimes because he makes more money than them. It's just it's grown into this emotional like juggernaut that I don't know how to work around it. Profits are not evil. I think that when government mandates or enforces profits, there's an element of evil. There's an
I was
element of
going to say that's why I
coercion.
support Pfizer and why the vaccine profits are amazing.
Whoa, hold on a second.
Well, yeah,
There's
no, it's true. Tim's like, whoa,
no,
not
whoa,
those
whoa, hold
ones,
on. We're gonna go down the
not those
vaccine road.
profits.
I didn't prep for that.
No,
But
I'll avoid that.
that was a great joke, though. That was well played, man. You
Yeah.
freaked me out for a second. My face is red. Did you see it? If you guys are listening on the radio, I am actually having a physical reaction to what Kevin said, and I can barely contain myself.
I triggered Tim. I got him.
You did a good job, man. You did a good job.
Amazing, love it. So we're gonna head to break in just a minute, and so and maybe when I come back, I meant to read some of these headlines associated with qualified immunity, but maybe we'll talk about that. We'll talk, and then we'll talk about another aspect of the state that maybe we're not sure if we want to give them that power. We're gonna talk about the death penalty, the case in Florida, and and this is an emotionally charged case. We'll talk about it as
Sure.
the school shooting case, and whether or not you need unanimous approval to impose the death penalty. Ron DeSantis is saying no, he shouldn't need to do that. So we're going to talk about that in just a second. Thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. All right.
That was well played, bro. That was really well done. I was just like, my ears kind of like I don't know. It was weird.
I love that I got that much of a reaction out of you for that.
I tried to ignore it too, and I tried to move past it. I'm like, whoa, 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 hold on a second.
That's right. So there you go, guys. Look, audience out there, if you want to get Tim flustered, you just talk about how much you love Pfizer's profits and
Yeah, the government and man, they're thick as thieves. Absolutely thick as thieves. Get some reactions on that. Zach, they at John Campbell, New York, and the Zach reports already.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
nice. So,
It's a picture. It's a guy puking because he can't stomach the word salad that he got. I love it. That's beautiful. Twitter is a beautiful place, guys. It
amazing.
really is. It really is kind of fun.
Yeah, Twitter has its bright sides for sure.
Yeah, it has its
But-
dark side. Like Rob Reiner and Robert Rice show up in my feed all the time. Like, what the heck kind of deal is that? And I want to block them, but then I also occasionally I do have to offer some comments about what they said.
Yeah, come on. That's the fun part, right? You get to add your commentary to whatever nonsense they're saying.
That is a good part. That is.
All right, so we'll go back at 24 minutes, and yeah, be there again. The folks listening, leave your comments, and got anything good to say? We'll read on air.
We will absolutely do that.
It's good. And all right, back in 10. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host for today, joined by Tim, the Freedom Variant / broadcast journalist, O'Connor.
That's me. There we go. I like it.
Yeah,
We need a few more titles.
Yeah, anyone can just call themselves that, right? Broadcast.
That's right.
Why not? There's no license.
There isn't.
Not yet.
No, if Chris Cuomo can be a broadcast journalist, so can Tim O'Connor, and so can Kevin Wilson.
Isn't he just a podcaster now? Like, does he have
probably.
an actual show?
Everybody has a podcast, but he's not a real libertarian.
No, I think that is probably the most accurate use of that statement. He's not a real libertarian, indeed.
He is not. People are talking about being libertarian. Bill Barr came out with a big statement this past week on the Bill Maher show. Bill Barr on Bill Maher said, we have to move in a libertarian direction, or society is going to crash and burn. I'm paraphrasing. I'm adding my own color to it, but it was interesting from a guy who's made his living off of enforcing the rules of the state. It was very interesting to hear him say that, see him say that.
Every once in a while, that I think that Republicans occasionally recognize the excesses of the government system that they've been a part of, and recognize that their supporters, their voters, recognize those excesses. Although when they're in a position to actually do something about it, they go ahead and do the opposite.
They
just
do.
constantly.
And so Ron DeSantis, the freedom-loving Floridian governor, Kevin, that's who we're going to talk about now.
Yeah. So Ron DeSantis, again, the governor of Florida, was talking about the death sentence decision for the school shooter. What's his name? Nicholas Cruz.
Yeah.
Nicholas Cruz. So that situation, verdict obviously guilty. That was, we knew that was going to happen. It was pretty well known that he did this crime, and and so like the next part of it is that the jury has to decide on what the punishment for that would be, right? And in Florida, there's a requirement, as it is in most other states, that a death penalty decision needs to be unanimous, right? So if you're going to impose that sort of penalty, every single juror needs to agree. And he said, well, maybe only 8 out of 12 agree or something, but we can't have a situation where one person can derail this. In this case, there are actually several people who had said that they weren't going to do that. There are 3 jurors who said that they didn't want to impose the death penalty, and people have lots of reasons for that. So Tim, what are your thoughts on this thing in particular, and then we'll talk about the death penalty generally.
Yeah, the death penalty is an easy one for me. Like, I don't care about anything other than the fact that the state has all the power that it needs right now, and it doesn't need to be having the power to kill people. Like, yes, Nicholas Cruz, reprehensible. Lock him up, throw away the key. I get it. Okay. But the reality is this authoritarian erosion of our judicial system concerns me way more than I don't know. Like, I don't want the government to put people to death. Maybe that's the former liberal in me. I don't know, but it's ostensibly reprehensible to me. It bothers me. So it's easy.
Yeah.
Like, too bad, Ron, you didn't get to kill this kid. Sorry. Like, oh well. So he's reacting emotionally. On some level, I understand
You get
that.
Well, it is emotional, right? Like what he did was like horrible. It just totally beyond the pale awful, right? Like,
Right.
I don't think
Absolutely.
anyone would disagree with that. And that situation causes people to want to act in a way that seeks justice, and for some people, the seeking justice in this case means that he needs to have his life taken from him, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, I get that, and I used to think that way too. Tim, I've kind of moved over to where you are now, is that I don't, and part of the reason why I don't think, like, the state in our legal processes should not be able to take someone's life generally, and morally. It's also not something that you can reverse, and that's kind of how I started coming to this, right? Like, because there's so many situations. In this case, he did it, right? And that's
Right.
where it complicates. In this case, he did it. There's no doubt in anyone's mind, and I know every conviction is supposed to be, beyond a shadow of a doubt, right? You're supposed to be 100% certain that this person committed this crime before imposing any sort of guilty verdict on them. This
Right.
case, probably less so than most, less doubt than most.
Right.
But there's so many cases where you find out 10, 20, 30 years later that someone who is maybe already been executed, or someone who's been on death row for decades, new evidence comes out, and turns out they were the police officers and the DAs were just really gung-ho on getting a conviction, or got confused by something and they got the wrong guy.
Or they had a decent piece of circumstantial evidence, and they had statements that they believed from people about this criminal. When we see that, though, like, again, that happens a couple, 3, 4 times a year, where we see a guy getting released from prison after serving 20 years who was innocent the whole time. Um, and so that isn't actually this situation, but that is a great, like, contra argument to the death penalty for sure.
Yeah. And I think it's important, but like to me, it's like you can't reverse this. You can't like decide like, oh, we messed up on this one, right? So like this one, like this particular case, it's a bit more complicated. And I get that. Like that argument doesn't like work as well, but I'm still with you that even in the worst situations, the state shouldn't lower itself to killing people in any situation, either like in this case or in the case related to the topic we were talking about earlier with qualified immunity. There are other situations where police officers are killing someone who may not even be accused of a crime yet and then getting away with it because of qualified immunity as well. And
Daniel
that
Shaver, guys, I'm telling you
yeah.
what, if you want the best argument that you'll ever see, look up Daniel Shaver, look up at what the cop gets to live the rest of his life. The video is very detailed. It's an awful watch though, guys.
Yeah.
It hurts you to watch it. That police officer should not have been able to retire with a pension, and he should not have been excused from his malfeasance there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Period.
no, that's
End it.
that's a
And
rough one.
it's a great argument to end qualified immunity.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's the case. And it's separate, exists outside of like cases where you're, presenting evidence in the court of law and then deciding, what that punishment should be. And actually prior to 2016, it used to be that you needed fewer jurors in Florida to be able to get a death penalty conviction. You could get it with a 7-5 majority. So, just over half. But yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, if you are going to have this, and I don't really think you do, but if you are, like, I don't see why you wouldn't want it to be unanimous. Is that you want everyone to be on the same page? This is so bad that like we need the state to like kill this person.
Yeah,
Like,
I think were we clear enough though that like Nicholas Cruz is convicted? That's it. Game over.
yeah,
It's minimum life in prison.
yeah,
There's
he's
a
going to be in jail the
sentencing
rest of his
phase.
life, right? Like, it's not like
Yeah.
he's escaping punishment,
Right.
right?
Like there's no possibility that he's going to escape. There's none of these things are possible. The reality is that now they have a jury voting on whether he should be put to death or not. I'm sure a couple jurors could be anti-death penalty. They could be like, hey, he's really young. He suffered some trauma at school. He was abused. Like, he doesn't deserve to die at the hands of the state, regardless of how heinous his crime was. Look, guys, again, he doesn't deserve to walk the streets of a free world again. I'm not saying that, but I just don't want the government to kill anybody.
Yeah, right. For multiple reasons, right? Again, for some of the reasons you said, either you just don't want the state doing that, or you think there are other circumstances where, like, hey, this guy's going to get punished. He's going to spend the rest of his life in jail, but shouldn't die for that, or anything else, right? Like,
yeah, well, one of the arguments that comes up pretty often is that the death penalty is a deterrent from a violent crime.
I don't think it is.
Well, it's an argument that comes up.
No, it is. It is.
I'm not
yeah.
making that
No,
argument. I
yeah,
want
it
to be
comes up.
very clear, Kevin.
Yeah. No, I understand.
Okay.
but
It's not. This is an emotional breakdown. They've lost some piece of their humanity, and they go and commit horrendous acts of violence.
I mean, like we just had the shooting was in California this week, right? Like how did it end? That the shooter committed suicide, right? Like a lot of these people like don't. These mass shooters don't expect to get out of that situation alive at all. Like they expect that to be like they're not worried about dying in this situation. They're not worried about being executed at the hands of the state. Like that's what they expect to happen anyway. And there's like the argument of like, well, that this punishment ends up being in some ways like harsher because they have their entire life to reflect on the act that they did rather than it being over. Now, death penalty executions take forever. They end up being just ridiculously expensive too. Like that's another argument against this is just that there's
Absolutely. They expect the the appeals, the fighting, the protesting, death penalty cases, death penalty people that are going to suffer the death penalty. They cost our society millions of dollars anyway. It's
yeah.
locking them up for the rest of their life is. I
Weirdly,
believe I
it's
read a
cheaper.
study that it's cheaper or at least not as lawyers
Yeah.
don't get as rich off of it. I'm glad
Exactly
about
right.
that.
And and then there's the fact that there's no nice way to kill somebody. Like a lot of times it does end up being way more brutal than you'd expect. You're also getting doctors who have to like get involved with violating what they feel like is a violation of their oath, or in worse situations, you get non-medical professionals involved, and you end up with botched executions that are just horrific. Um, and all sorts of reasons to avoid this. And I know, like, I don't know, I think the guy deleted, but there's a Rochester radio host who was talking about how like, oh, we used to hang horse thieves. Maybe we should do that with like uh people who steal cars too. I'm like, oh my God, what a barbaric thing to say.
It is. It's incredible. This slide towards authoritarianism and government power. Like I hope.
Yeah.
Did
And
he
like and
win?
that like it's that toxic mindset too, right? You said that slide towards, government powers. Like if you start accepting like, oh well maybe the state should kill people for their crimes. Like like the many governments have kind of slid into that over time. Like, oh yeah, like we just gotta get rid of them, right? And then yeah, the appeals and all the messy stuff that ends up being expensive with death penalties, like you think you want to just like rid yourself of that, but like do you really want the state executing people like quickly, efficiently? Because guess what? You're gonna just start killing a lot of innocent people and probably mostly political enemies. Like that's what's gonna happen.
That I guess that's part of the long term fear, right? Like it always breaks down to me. Like at some point, if you give them the power to do it, where do they? That power is just seems to be growing massively. Why give them any more power?
Yeah.
Period.
No, just stay away from it. I'd rather in most situations the state not have that power because gosh, every time the state has the power to do something, they seem to want to find new excuses to use it.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. Absolutely. That kind of segues towards the doomsday clock kind of thing, right? They figured out how to make an atomic bomb back in the 40s, early 40s.
Mhm.
And in 1947, I think if I read the article correctly, if I'm recalling it right, they came out with this doomsday clock of a human inspired catastrophic event that is going to end society as we know it. And
Mhm.
lo and behold, this year um,
Oh,
they moved it.
Tim, I'm apologizing that because you know why? We're starting
Okay.
to head the break.
All
That's
right,
it. Yeah.
let's do it.
So we got two breaks this show. So we're gonna save that for our third segment.
Perfect.
Even though I don't have a nice fourth segment to start fake news, we'll see if we get in there. But we'll start that in a few minutes. We've got about doomsday clock. We're gonna talk about maybe some fake news, maybe some Robert Reich stuff, and we'll see what else we get to. All right, thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. We're going to be back in just a few minutes. Talk to you soon. And we're good.
All right.
Yeah. So yeah, there we go. I know we'll give it another, I don't know, minute or so, and we'll jump right back into it.
All right, that sounds good.
Yeah,
That'll give me
and
to
you can do your reading, catch up.
reread the article a little bit. It does. It gives me a discussion point for Diane Sayer and I talked about it a lot. And we when we were kids, we used to talk about nuclear war and nuclear annihilation, and it kind of all went away with Gorbachev tearing down the wall and the Cold War kind of getting set on the back burner, and it
Mhm.
felt good, you know. And here we are, kind of battling it out in Ukraine, and Russia's has threatened, not
Yeah,
regularly threatening, but to use nuclear weapons. And
yeah,
look, even. I'll talk about it when we're doing the show.
Yeah.
It's
We'll go
interesting.
back in 5 seconds. 5,
All right.
4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to A Free Solution. I'm Kevin Wilson, your host today, joined by Tim, long middle name O'Connor.
Perfect. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, there we
Long
go.
middle name.
And
That's good stuff.
all right, and so we're gonna talk about the doomsday clock, right? So again, you're explaining what the doomsday clock is. Like there's what the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists who made this clock to kind of represent, how close are we to nuclear annihilation, right?
Correct. Nuclear annihilation, but they actually are have broadened their perspective. I'm going to mention that a little bit too. But they've broadened their perspective from being about a nuclear catastrophe that will end human civilization. Maybe not every single human being on the face of the planet, but it will end civilization as we know it. And so they've expanded it to the pandemics, and they've expanded it to global warming, are also included. So this year they moved it 10 seconds forward to 90 seconds till midnight. Now I remember a time in the 90s when basically the Cold War was over, where they actually slid the hands of the doomsday clock back. And the 90s was the early 90s, especially late 80s, was just an amazing time from what I remember of it in our society. So things kind of had shaped up. So now here we are. Like, I don't think we're talking enough about what will happen if Russia decides to use nuclear weapons. I had a conversation with Diane Sayer about it. As some of you may know, she's good friends with Scott Ritter, the former weapons inspector. Who was calling out George Bush pretty much the whole time about, look, Iraq doesn't have weapons of mass destruction. We're here under false pretenses. And now basically that's become on some level common knowledge and part of our accepted zeitgeist, right? So he's here saying, look, you guys are wrong. Like, we can't just poo-poo nuclear war. He's like fatalistic about it. He's like, if Russia will wipe us off the face of the planet. I'm more of like, any kind of nuclear confrontation is going to change life as we know it. And so the atomic scientists seem to recognize that I am correct.
I think that you're correct. Yeah, that's their criteria for evaluation. Is Tim correct? I think that is a fair statement that it would change life as we know it. It might not end humanity, and I'll see if I can find there's like a guidebook on like how to survive like a nuclear strike in your area too, which is fascinating. But
we should probably all kind of get that and bone up on it. And iodine, guys, you got to have some iodine around. I mean, these are things that are important.
A little weird. Now I like printed that out and stuff. Like, okay, like this is a little bit, like prepper thinking, but like, just printed that out. Like, how do you take care of yourself, take care of your family, deal with radiation. This is like this joint report put out by like a nonprofit NGO and the government. But anyway, so on kind of like the idea of the nuclear threat and like related to Russia, I will say like specifically one of the threats that was made recently was that the former prime minister of Russia, and I think his former president too, had put out a thing on Telegram saying that it was Dmitry Medvedev, or whatever his name is, and so he put out a thing saying like, well, if we lose, like it's unprecedented for nuclear power to lose, so we're they threaten to use nuclear weapons in that situation, right? So let me make the kind of devil's advocate argument for like, because his thing was like, if the West keeps supplying Ukraine, then like they'll have no choice, right? Because they can't afford to lose this war. But 2 points to counter that. One is nuclear powers have absolutely lost wars in the past. Like it's the United States lost in Vietnam. The United States lost in Afghanistan. Russia lost in Afghanistan. It's not like that's their only option if they lose the war. They could just eat crow and go home. Like they could just leave. No one's forcing them to beat it. They can leave. And like I don't care if it makes them look weak. Like that is not my problem. You guys are jerks. That's my stance on that. And the other thing too is like, if the West were to respond to this generally in capitulate in saying like, okay, yes, like we're scared of this, like we don't want to risk nuclear war, so we'll stop supporting this conflict in any way, morally or materially, so we're gonna walk away because of this nuclear threat. Do you think that that makes the world a less safe place? Do you think that makes it more likely that Russia and other belligerent countries are going to make similar types of threats, knowing darn well that the countries who might combat that are going to back down?
I, that's actually a pretty interesting point, honestly, yeah, I mean, I guess I get what you're saying, but also, what else could they take? They tried to take Afghanistan and they lost miserably. Like they want the Ukraine purportedly for protecting themselves from NATO and protecting their own hegemony. Like those are their purported goals here. So I honestly, like, I don't think people in Ukraine want this war. I don't think people in Russia want this war. For me, those are the issues that I got to focus on. That's a great question. Obviously, I don't want to answer it. I'm going to sidestep it to the best of my ability and change
Man,
the
you should be
subject.
governor or
Offer you
something.
word salad, Kevin.
Learning from the best. Learn from your inspiration, Governor Hochul.
Yeah, Kathy
Uh,
Hochul. I mean, I'm offering you word salad on it because I gotta go to what you said. There's always more solutions than what
yeah,
the either or that's being presented, right? So I I, I want to talk about the people in both Russia and Ukraine and how they don't really want this war. And so how do we fix that, you know?
yeah. No, I understand, and I agree with you. And like finding a path to peace is important. I say it sort of rubs me the wrong way. Like the both like extreme ends of this, of like the United States should get like more directly involved in this. Like, no, that's probably not
Not
prudent
good.
to do that. And then the other side, which like I know, and unfortunately, there's some folks in the liberty movement who get a little bit too like, oh, like Russia's not doing anything wrong; they're just defending their legitimate interests, and like we should just like totally back down, or we're going to face nuclear war. I'm like, oh, like that. Doing that has its own set of consequences too.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily guarantee long-term peace either. There are drawbacks to that, and it's important to acknowledge that.
Yeah, so let's move on from the doomsday scenario, but let's just make
Yeah,
fun of the atomic scientists for, well, not necessarily make fun of them, but as you guys know, I'm skeptical about the response to climate change, and very skeptical about the government response to COVID-19. But I just want you guys to know that the atomic scientists are not skeptical about those things, and they included that in their decision to move the clock forward 10 seconds. So,
the climate change stuff.
yeah, climate change and COVID-19, future pandemics.
Well, I mean, that's fair. I mean, like, what's weird is like the after COVID-19, I'm actually generally more optimistic. Like well, like we handled this like relatively well compared to say like the Black Death, like or the
Sure.
smallpox one. Like it could have been a lot worse.
It could have been a lot worse,
It was
but
pretty bad. Like the lockdowns, not great, not a good trade off.
no.
And a lot of people still died. But
I
like we handled
yeah.
it like we have the technology to address this so much quicker than we did before. Like to me, like
Mm,
I see this and like it's not that a future pandemic couldn't like cause way more havoc, but
what?
like there's smart people who are finding very quick ways to like fight the disease and figure stuff out.
Alright, that's a very positive outlook, and I'm gonna let you have it without any debate. How's that sound?
Wow, amazing.
It's it's fair. Like, it's a fair, positive outlook and a great way to look at it. I am gonna try to look at it that way myself. I'm gonna put some effort in.
No. So there are a ton of great lessons about how we can respond to pandemics better that we will absolutely not learn out of this though. Like there's
That
your pessimists.
we will absolutely continue to. And look, COVID itself could have been more serious for many more segments of the population, and
Yeah.
that's part of that trust was violated with how they handled COVID. I think I don't think
Yeah.
that they played it as straight as they should have, and we punished people that literally punished them in the sense that they didn't need the protection that we offered them. We didn't need to take things from them. And yes, we should have done better. Like
Yeah.
that's my only counterpoint. And people know how I feel about the government response to COVID. So I feel like I've talked about it ad nauseum.
Yeah. That's what I get. Like, again, to me, like we're at a point in technology where pandemics are, again, a lot easier to deal with. Not just in terms of like finding like cures or vaccines or anything else, but also like, could you imagine if this happened in the late 90s, right? Like we're in an environment where like everyone had to be in person to do like so many more things, right? Again,
Sure.
I recognize a lot of people still had to be in person to do their jobs. Like that's a thing, but it's worse if you, in order to keep your job, you have to physically be in an office all the time. It just wasn't really an option to work from home in the 90s.
We had something of a pandemic in the 90s, a swine flu of sorts that was pretty serious and had at first a really, really high death rate.
Yeah.
And so what we did was kind of ignored it, like, to be honest with
Right.
you. So
Well, and something similar happened in like it was like what, like 2010 or something. There's another serious flu outbreak, and man, I was at college, didn't even notice, like wasn't a thing. Like it's not like I had to do the whole like remote classroom thing.
we had an outbreak at my school where, like, literally everybody got sick. Like, they were taking people in buses to the hospital, and, like, it didn't
Wow.
even make the national news, bro. Like, they didn't even shut down the school. We're just like, "You guys are gonna get sick, and good luck, and if you get really sick, there's a bus leaving for the hospital in 15 minutes." I am
Yikes,
not
that's
kidding you.
wild.
People were I ended up going home breached across a vacation, right? And I didn't get sick. I was like spraying my door with Lysol and kind of joking around and doing whatever I could to avoid it.
Mhm.
And then I just went home and got drunk for a week, and I was fine. Like, I got sick really sick one night when I was out having drinks. And then after that, it was like, all right, I'm good to go. Like, so that's a, you know, that's how I handled my local pandemic. It was
Yeah.
serious though. I don't even think they identified the cause. Like, it was probably food poisoning, right?
Yeah, that's nuts, man. Like
I
bus
mean,
loads to the hospital is like what gets me. Like,
I
yeah,
honestly, it just this conversation, I've kind of put it in the back of my head because it was such a minor event. But actually, in this day and age, it would be world news, bro. Like, I am not kidding you. It was people, 70, 80 kids. Like, it was crazy, and everybody got sick except for me.
yeah, that's nuts. But I don't know. Listen, the just to close out the doomsday clock thing. Like I get like the increased worry about nuclear war because of the whole Russia Ukraine situation. I don't know that Russia is suicidal enough to do that, because if they do that, they're gonna face some pretty swift consequences, and it's not gonna be good for any of us, probably. But they
Right.
also know that. They know that, like, hey, if you do this, like, there's a chance that you're getting obliterated, right? Like that NATO will not allow the current government of Russia to exist any further, right? Like that's what's gonna happen, for better or worse. That's a thing that'll happen. But the rest of the stuff, I'm generally more optimistic about. Climate change, I think we can out technology it. Pandemics, same thing.
Honestly, if we invest wisely, we can make a lot of money off this climate change thing. I mean, there's like streets in Kingston that eventually the ocean's got to make it up to. Like, they are going to be beachfront property, bro. Like, I'm just saying, if we do this right, people are going to get rich.
Yeah, 100%. Speaking getting rich, I want to read a real news or fake news headline for you.
All right, do it.
You tell me if this is real. Egg seizures at U.S. border are up 108%. Are people trying to smuggle eggs into United States to take advantage of the high prices? Real news or fake news?
That is real news, man. Black markets find a way, brother. Like, this is real news, and I love them for it.
Yeah.
Period.
No, it's a real thing. People are trying to smuggle some eggs to kind of just get around and meet demands where they can. We promised a little bit to talk about Robert Reich, although we've got like a minute left, and
Oh
yeah,
man,
like because he's on about how it's like it's all corporate greed that's driving egg
such a
prices,
joker.
which yeah, I know, like maybe we'll spend like 5 minutes talking about this and like a bonus segment for those listening online, but
Yeah, let's talk about it a little bit
yeah.
afterwards.
So we'll talk about Tim's favorite economist, Robert Reich. after in the bonus section. If you're listening at WYSL, appreciate y'all being here. Appreciate y'all being a part of the show. Make sure you catch our podcast too. Look for a free solution anywhere you find podcasts. You know, the full episode there. I get those up the same night we record this on Tuesday nights. Get those done. All right. So thanks again for joining us here on A Free Solution. Have a wonderful, wonderful night, folks. Take care. All right. And we're back with our free solution for our online audience, right? And so Robert Reich, though, this guy.
I can't believe how many likes he gets on Twitter. Like I still think it's got to be computer generated, because you go into his comments and everybody's making fun of him.
It's so, I mean, he knows how to get good like rage engagement. And let me read the tweet about it. Is he says egg prices are up 60%. That's absurd. People are paying upwards of $6 and $7 for a dozen eggs. Why? Corporate greed.
Corporate greed.
Corporate greed. Lightning sounds, thunder. Yes. So Cal-Maine, the largest egg producer in the U.S., is raking record profits, $198 million in the latest quarter. That's a 65% increase from a year ago. It goes on, right? Like,
sure.
Yeah. With all this, like, something to keep in mind with egg producers is, yeah, like they're usually there's a conflation between like profits and revenue in a lot of these situations.
That's why he's not a real economist. Like he literally can say anything that supports his position, and it doesn't have to be true. And then he gets 110,000 likes or 23,000 likes. Some readers though, some other tweeters.
I don't know if he like doesn't know better or if he does and doesn't care. Like with him, I genuinely do not know sometimes.
Well, right. I think we give him the benefit of the doubt because of his history of working for the Clinton administration and having TV shows and stuff like that. But he's been wrong about everything, and he has a one-track fascist kind of way of presenting things that does nothing. So readers of Twitter added context to that tweet, right? Egg prices are up because of an ongoing wave of avian influenza, which has killed 29% of U.S. egg-laying birds. So that, guys, that's almost catastrophic unless, like me, you can get eggs from your friends and family. And I have, guys, I'm not kidding. I have 54 eggs in my fridge right now.
Wow. Man, hey, man, you sure you want to announce that on the internet?
I know. I have, I can protect my eggs. Or honestly, I have 54 eggs. If you need eggs, all you got to do is ask. Honest to God, like you having trouble getting eggs at the store and you want to bake a cake, you can come to me. The Freedom variant will supply you with eggs. Maybe for a price. Maybe I just give them to you. I don't know. I have a snow shovel outside. I haven't cleaned my walks off yet. Come on over.
A little bit of barter going on.
Yeah, a little bit of barter, a little labor for some eggs.
Why not? How's the government going to tax that, Tim?
They can't tax it, can they? I mean, there's no Venmo transaction for $600. Ain't nothing happening there. I'm just a guy talking on the internet making a joke right now,
That's right.
But I do have 54 eggs.
Really are that many eggs, but yeah, no, the community note on this is great and very helpful too. And this is happening with all sorts of inflation stuff, right? Like with like eggs going up and with gasoline prices going up. And what is like so bizarre about this, and libertarians and actual economists are quick to point this out, is like, okay, so when the prices fall, are these companies all just being generous now? Did they suddenly decide to be like, yes, we've decided we hate profits now and we're going to just give this away? But no, that's market pressure that's lowering it, and then they rake in a little bit less revenue, but their costs are lower, and that's fine. At the end of the day, they're still figuring it out, or sometimes they're not, and they have to close stuff down or rearrange or get into other goods. Okay, and then that lowers the supply, and then the prices go up again, and then other players get into the market because the price goes up, and that lowers it. It's what happens in a free market.
So every position he takes supports the notion that A, leftists should be running the government, and B, leftists should be running corporations through the power of the government. Like that's his economic outlook. Like he doesn't give a crap. Like he wants you to be mad about eggs, so you vote for Joe Biden. Like that his economics is a campaign slogan for the Democrat Party. Like it's not even real economics, man.
Yeah, give us power, and we're gonna fix this problem for you. No, they won't. They're not going to.
They
Don't
will
believe it.
not. Joe Biden. They, look,
Yeah.
he's smarter than everybody says he is. But he's also not smart. He is smarter than everybody says he is, but he's still not smart.
Well, sometimes I think he's cynical. Like he does this stuff, and he's just like, I know if I say this thing, it's gonna get people riled up, and it's not really about like fixing the problem. It's kind of about like just motivating people to be on his side on something, getting people to vote for him again. That's kind of what it is. Joe Biden's really good at it. That's why he's been in politics for, I don't know,
Yeah, people are
60
getting all
years.
upset that he's a liar. I'm like, he dropped out of a presidential race because he got caught plagiarizing his
did.
law school work. Like, how did we forget? How does the zeitgeist let go of that stuff? Like, honest to
No, in the
God.
age of the internet, like it is weird that it didn't come up more often during the 2020 campaign because so many parts of the media were like, Trump's a liar. To be clear, he is.
Yeah.
He is a liar. But so is Joe Biden, like just all the time. Either lies because he's just like making stuff up and I don't know, like what the heck are you talking about, Joe? And then other times like where he just the plagiarism thing, like just straight up stole like someone else's work or straight up stole like
speeches.
Stole campaign speeches, stole biographies, like just make stuff up about like he said he was like a trucker for a while. Like what? Dude, what are you talking? You are either like senile or a liar, and I don't like the implications of either one of those.
It's just bad. He's definitely a liar. Like that's the thing. That's why I love George Santos. This guy got caught early in his political career. And everybody knows he's just going to keep lying, and they're going to keep reelecting him. He got a committee. He got a couple of committee positions. One, the science committee. I wish I could remember the name of it, but also the small business committee. He is on 2 committees, and then I can't imagine he may even be on 3 committees.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I know, like, so he got 2 committees, the House Small Business Committee and I think it was a Science Committee, but yeah, the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee.
Trust the science, baby. Just trust that science. Yeah, like, George Santos is
like Kevin McCarthy. Like, why? Well, you didn't have to. You could just you can recognize that this guy, like, maybe not someone you want to associate with. Just don't assign him to stuff. Like, just leave him off. It's going to help all the Republicans. Like, no one wants to be associated with this.
I know. Honestly, that brings up somebody calling Kevin McCarthy out for not letting Adam Schiff, Eric Swalwell, and Ilhan Omar serve on committees. A fellow Republican's calling him out for that. She's like, I said it was bullcrap when it happened in 2020 and the Democrats did it, and I'm not going to change my position. I will say that to me is why, at the very least, I'm more sympathetic to Republicans, because at some point there's always a Republican that breaks ranks and speaks truth to power, So like, not the GOP, okay, but Republicans as human beings seem to be able to. I don't know. I'm glad that Adam Schiff's not going to get it. I think it's great soap opera drama. Eric Swalwell, like any guy that threatens to use nuclear weapons against the American populace, even though Joe Biden kind of made the same like lighthearted threat against the American people, shouldn't be on any committees. And Ilhan Omar is an anti-Semite, and she's kind of evil. So whatever. I'm just saying how I feel. Yeah. I identify as not liking Ilhan Omar.
That's fair. There are some things she says and does that are absolutely worth criticism, and yeah, I don't know. It'd be nice to elect a few less people like that.
Yeah, there would be, if we could just not elect them in the first place. That would be great.
If we could just stop electing all of them, just. No, I know. When I said that, it sounds like I'm against like the Republic. I mean all of the bad ones, all of them. So like just Everyone except for like Justin Amash,
Yeah.
and maybe Thomas Massey when he's had his Wheaties. I don't know. Like,
Sometimes Rand Paul, sometimes
yeah,
Rand Paul comes really close to sounding like a libertarian and being at the very least philosophically consistent. But I
yeah,
do always, every time I say that, I want to remind everyone that he crapped all over Edward Snowden when Snowden
he
started
did.
whistleblowing. He was so leading the news cycle with this he should not be releasing these secrets. This guy is a traitor to the United States. And it's like, are they true or false? Like that's what I want
Important
to
thing to
know.
know.
Turns out they're
Yeah,
true. So I haven't never forgiven Rand for that, to be honest with you.
yeah. No, he's like occasionally he'll sound really libertarian, but he doesn't identify as libertarian. Like, he once called libertarianism like an albatross on him. Like he doesn't like the association.
Whatever. He does do libertarian things. The Breonna Taylor law was a
Yeah,
libertarian
I'll say
thing.
he does occasionally do some libertarian things. He did, despite some of his reactions to whistleblowers, like he has worked hard on like the NSA stuff.
He does that great. Hey, this is what we spend our money on. He does that every year. Like here's
Oh,
some
that
items from the
his
budget,
Festivus
like
stuff.
cracked
I do
up
like his
quail.
Festivus stuff.
Like we spent $500,000 on studying cracked up quail. Like that's weird. We don't need to do that.
How will we know what happens when we give whales crack, Tim? Like you gotta know. You gotta do the science. George
Sometimes
Santos gonna be approving studies like that soon.
that guy, I can't wait to see what that guy comes up with. This is going to be epic. Holy cow. It's and again, I think that George Santos got caught for the entertainment value, right? Like I think that there's profit in sensationalized news for news outlets. And I do think it's more profitable to get a guy elected or let a guy get
Oh,
elected and then call him out. And then like,
I
oh
still
wait,
don't think
look
so.
what we just
Like,
found about you, like
no, like I still think it's like just the Democrats dropped the ball. Like it's weird that they didn't, right? Like they didn't do anything. Like there's nothing to gain from Democrats not calling this out before the election, because like you imagine you make that the national like narrative is like you have this dude who is an absolute bonkers liar. Like you make him the face of the Republican Party.
oh, that would have been I see what you're saying. I
Yeah.
think I wonder. I wonder. That I'm gonna have to ruminate on that one. I like that.
Yeah. Like it's
That's a good conspiracy way of looking at it. Like, how did they drop the ball on this?
Yeah, like it's just wild incompetence. Like I don't know. Like I don't have any other. There apparently were some stories like locally about it, but like they didn't gain much traction in the district.
Well,
Which is
that district
weird.
was hungry for a Zeldin win and a Republican win. So
Yeah, like I mean, gosh, if it never really made it up to any of the newspapers up here, but like, man, that would have been like a great fake news item. Like during the campaign, I would have done like half a show on that. It's hilarious.
oh man, it would have been great. I hope he comes on the show.
There you go. Hey, George Santos, you're invited to a show. I want to hear your stories.
we want to know what it's like to be Jewish.
Man, he's got I don't know.
How do you get
Just
to
more
make the
stuff,
claim
and who
that you're
knows? Like he might have been like a drag queen in Brazil for a while too, or maybe not. I don't know. Like there's
Yeah.
all new
Yeah,
stuff
no,
that
he's had a very an interesting history. And look, I think right now anything that comes out, I kind of believe it. I'm just like, yeah, no, he probably did
yeah,
that. Like, I'm
yeah,
not
that makes
doubting
sense, man.
anything.
He is the Forrest Gump of Congress. Like it just
He could be. Alice, that's a great question. How do they get constantly elected when they don't look out for us? I don't. It's a system, right? There's a
oh,
problem with the system. The system is incumbency is such a huge advantage. It's amazing.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
well, I'll offer two explanations. One is that a lot of people are voting and they are more afraid of the other person getting elected than they are in voting for someone who might be incompetent or doesn't represent their interests all that well. Like that's how unfortunately a lot of people vote on negative partisanship now. They're afraid of the Democrat or they're afraid of the Republican, so they're going to support their imperfect candidate, and you end up just massively decreasing quality of that. But there's also like, and this might be some like self-justification, right? Like I'm not just voting against the other guy. I care about these issues that they care about. There's
Right.
that they are looking out for me. Like I voted for him, so I must be voting with my best interest. There's a little bit of self-delusion that goes on with this
There-
with some
There's
folks.
I still think there's this love of power too, being affiliated with the win and hoping that your guy is going to do something to punish your enemies. I think that to
Oh, sure.
me it seems like so. Anyways, let's talk about this Mike Tyson thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you sent me that. I did. I don't know
You
much
didn't
about
read
this.
it, so basically, as probably everybody knows, Mike Tyson spent some jail, did some jail time for a non-consensual, for rape. Okay, like that's what he did. He spent 2 years or 3 years in jail, um, and now he's getting sued by someone else, basically in the same time frame when he was really popular, and so he's getting sued by somebody else for like $30 million for a non-consensual sexual act, and he's just like, well, it was consensual. I don't know what to tell you. What do you think about old Mike Tyson?
I don't know. That sounds pretty bad. I don't know if it's true or not. Like I don't have strong opinions on it. Other than yeah, if he did it, there should be some recompense, right? Like
Yeah,
it
so
sounds like jail's not on the table, but money, sure. That's
yeah, like the Bill Cosby thing, right? Like they waited years to prosecute him, and they still got him. So I wonder
that's
if it's true. Got a funny story to tell everybody. I'm not sure. I have to kind of like, as you guys know, I used to work in the restaurant business, and so stories would come to you, and perhaps people you knew would put themselves in wild situations. Because Kevin, I want to tell you right now, the '90s and the late '80s were the wildest times ever. Like people had money, people were doing crazy stuff. We'd go to shows, we'd go to concerts, we'd do all the wild stuff. Maybe it was just an age thing, but like I know people that have, let's say, Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson were having a fight in New York and they were up in our area, right? And so
yeah.
like Evander Holyfield was going to bars, like picking up chicks and you know
Uh,
offering them compensation for certain things. Now,
well,
I'm just saying, like, maybe Mike Tyson needed a better strategy. I don't know.
fine as long as it's all consensual. That's the important part. It's consensual. Like
That's
if it's
it.
it's not consensual, then yeah, no, that's pretty uncool.
Could that be construed as slander? Because I could actually kind of prove this allegation. Like, if somebody accuses me of slander, I'm warning you. I can prove this.
There you go. Well, we'll see. We'll see how things work out. You know, um,
This is
I know
quality content that you are not going to get anywhere else.
that's fair, man.
That's why I'm a broadcast journalist.
Tim's telling stories. You better be ready to back that up, man.
Oh, I
Uh,
can. I don't know if I
um,
can. Maybe it's just a story. I just made up a story to make our show, the end of our show, a little bit more interesting.
right. Oh, city council member liked one of my tweets. Rochester
Really?
City Councilman. Yeah, yeah. Why? So the city of Rochester. We talked about this a couple weeks back. The city is paying a bunch of money to have police officers like now just like outside of school. So they voted on a bill for $336,000 for overtime costs for police outside of city schools. That was related to like a shooting that happened outside of that school. And I tweeted, I get why people feel the need to do something, but would this actually have prevented the shooting? Will it prevent them in the future? Did it need to be an additional overtime expenditure? The person it passed 8-1, and the person who voted against it, Stanley Martin, was the one who liked
Okay.
my tweet.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, interesting. She's very. I think it's fair to say she's very anti-police. Like she is leading towards like we need to like dismantle police as a institution. I don't think that's an unfair assessment of like where she is.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, that is still either way. Like I don't want to spend more city money to pay police overtime to sit outside of schools. And like it couldn't have been done within the already massive budget of the Rochester Police Department, and is really putting these guys like extra in front of schools. Is that actually going to have prevented this particular situation? No, it wouldn't have. They would have done it anyway. I mean,
Right. That's the issue.
but
Yeah, no,
oh
we had a good conversation about that. We actually have as many viewers now as we had during the show. But
Yeah.
it's about that time, Kevin. I am whooped. I've been working on my house like crazy. Like crazy.
Nice.
Yeah, new bathroom, new kitchen sink, new kitchen sink countertop, like whew, just nonstop,
Getting
man.
your house fancy. You gotta have a house to match the wealth that you have in eggs now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I gotta have a place to sell my eggs. I
That's right.
want people to feel comfortable in here.
All right. So suppose we'll call it a night. Thanks everyone for listening. Appreciate y'all being here. Have a great night, folks. Take care.